Shalom uvracha, everyone. Rabbi Cantor, Texon, Cuban Hebrew congregation. Parashat Miketz, falling this year, the day after Hanukkah. This year, this parasha is read immediately following Hanukkah. It is usually read either on the first Shabbat where Hanukkah may fall, or the second, but not this year. Last week's parasha of Vayeshev either falls on the Shabbat immediately preceding Hanukkah or on Hanukkah, as was the case last week. It fell on the first day of Hanukkah, first days of Hanukkah. Parashat Miketz. Miketz means sof, the end of. The end of what? The end of 2 years of Joseph's imprisonment, where Pharaoh had the 2 dreams. And Joseph now is in prison. He was thrown into prison after being framed by the wife of Potiphar, who he worked for, his boss, the Sar HaTabachim, the chief butcher, had been accused of rape. He was framed because Potiphar's wife grabbed a hold of his robe and framed him, saying he tried to rape her, and here's the proof. Again, misleading false evidence. But he's thrown into jail. In jail, he interprets the dreams of the 2 co-prisoners, fellow prisoners. And he interprets them correctly. And his great talent, which brought him suffering with his own brothers in interpreting, now brings him salvation through the interpreting of the dreams of the prisoners, and then this led to the successful interpretation of the dreams of Pharaoh himself. And Pharaoh comes to Yosef comes to the attention of the great Pharaoh through the recommendation of the one prisoner whose dream was interpreted correctly, the chief butler, who casually recalls Joseph as having interpreted dreams in the prison. We ended last week's parasha where he forgot all about Joseph. Now he remembers, because Pharaoh was very disturbed. He couldn't sleep. A little bit like King Achashverosh in the Purim story. Couldn't sleep, which resulted in good things for the Jewish people. So Pharaoh couldn't sleep, and he takes the recommendation of the chief butler: bring me this young slave boy, Joseph. You say he has talent in interpreting dreams. He sure did. And after Pharaoh's magicians and soothsayers and interpreters gave their interpretations of the dreams, there were 2 dreams, the cows and the ears of corn, 7, the lean devouring the fat, in both cases. Pharaoh was not satisfied. He wasn't pleased. Something was wrong. And Hashem allowed for the magicians and interpreters to go first, so to speak, and not Joseph immediately to be the interpreter. Because Hashem wanted these other interpretations to fail. Because if Yosef went first, the others might claim, oh, we would have interpreted the same way. But no, Joseph's interpretation was brilliant, and Pharaoh could see the wisdom and the greatness of Joseph. Why? Because Pharaoh had a hunch that these two dreams were really one dream. And they were. One an extension of the other, the cows and the ears of corn. The ears of grain. And because Joseph saw them as one, before he even interpreted them, as the 7 years of plenty followed by the 7 years of famine, the Pharaoh knew Joseph was the man. And not only did he accept the interpretation, he allowed Joseph to become his manager, his minister of finance. Why? Because Joseph, unsolicited, offered a solution and an implementation of a plan to save Egypt from starvation and from the whole world. And the sages tell us that Yosef had a quality of Mashiach, like David. The whole world was saved by Yosef and his interpretation of these dreams and the implementation. Now there's a great connection with Hanukkah, again, as last week we pointed out with Vayeshev, even more with this week's Miketz. First of all, the parasha begins with, after 2 years, Pharaoh called upon Joseph to be brought out of the prison. Shenatayim. And our great sages and Kabbalists interpret Shenatayim as Smol Nerot Tadlik Yamin Mezuzah. That the Hanukkah lights will be lit to the left of the mezuzah in the home. That the home will be filled with mezuzot. There's an allusion to Hanukkah in Shenatayim. That these 2 years that Yosef was in prison, the Rashi Tevot stand for the Nerot Chanukah, which will be lit and fill us with mezuzot. Fill us with mitzvot. The mitzvot of lighting the Hanukkah candles. Furthermore, the second dream of Pharaoh, of the ears of corn, the 7 ears of corn, having one stalk, allude to the Chanukiah and the menorah. That the light of the menorah actually shined through the dreams of Pharaoh, alluding to the great holiday of Hanukkah. That the 7 ears of corn, but only one stalk, the Shamash and the one God, the Spirit of Hashem behind it all, is alluded to in the dreams of Pharaoh. Now, the twists and turns of the parasha, the story of Yosef and the brothers, Jose y sus hermanos, the twists and turns and the brilliance of Joseph in testing the brothers and putting them through hell. Karma for the hell they put him through. And Yehuda recognized that all this suffering that Yosef, the viceroy of Egypt, whom they did not recognize as his brother, was all due to what they did to Joseph, even though they didn't know this was Joseph, causing them all this suffering and putting them through all these tests and allowing them to return to their father Yaakov in Canaan, but keeping Shimon as a hostage when they went back. And they went back on the condition that they bring down to Egypt Binyamin, the youngest brother, to prove that they're telling the truth. And when they returned to their father Jacob in Canaan, they told him the whole story, how they were treated by this viceroy of Egypt, not knowing it was Joseph, and said, we can return only if we bring Binyamin. And it took the nobility of Yehuda to convince their father Yaakov to allow Binyamin to be taken down to Egypt only after the great noble Yehuda assumed total responsibility for Benjamin's safety. And they returned. And they were this time welcomed with a big, beautiful dinner party and a sumptuous meal. And then Yosef was more inclined to believe them. He really did. Now he saw Binyamin and he privately wept, went off in a corner and cried when he saw Binyamin. And then he let them return. But on the way, they were apprehended because Joseph had planted this silver goblet in Binyamin's sack and framed him as a thief in order to bring them all back and keep Binyamin as a slave. First they were allowed, Yosef framed Binyamin, and they were brought back. He sent a posse to run after them, and they all back. So we're left really with a cliffhanger here until next week's parasha, when the total revelation is exposed. In next week's parasha, Vayigash, again, when Yehuda, the noble brother, approaches Joseph and offers himself in place of Binyamin as a slave, does Joseph totally break down and reveal his identity. So we have this magnificent saga, but we have the light of Hanukkah shining through the whole story. The light of Hanukkah, the light of redemption, which led to the redemption of the family, the redemption of Egypt, and the salvation of the Jewish people. This is the beauty of Hanukkah, that in the darkness we will find hope, we will find light and courage to move forward and to repair the world. Be proactive. Yosef was not content with just interpreting the dreams for the Pharaoh. Unsolicited, he offers a solution. He's proactive. He wants to change the world, like Yaakov, his father. Let us change the world for the better and believe in Ruach Hashem, the divine plan behind it all. Shabbat Shalom.